Welcome to episode 28 of Anchored in Education. I'm E. Scott England, and Anchored in Education is the podcast dedicated to all things education. Educators across the world routinely engage in conversations surrounding fundamentals, concepts, and new ideas that improve this great profession. Sometimes we agree, other times we disagree. But at the end of the day, we are all anchored in education. Do you know who Claude C. Hopkins is? Unless you're in the advertising business, my best guess is no. Yet, thanks to Mr. Hopkins, millions of people across the globe regularly brush their teeth. No, he wasn't a dentist, although he did read countless dental textbooks. Hopkins was a businessman, or more accurately, an outstanding advertising agent. He was hired to promote the toothpaste Pepsodent in the early 1900s. The company realized how important toothbrushing was, but yet a relatively small population actually brushed their teeth routinely. Hopkins' advertisements made people become more aware of the film on their teeth and then exclaimed that Pepsodent would take the film away. And it worked. Within 3 weeks after Hopkins' ad exclaimed that prettier smiles were just a brush away, Pepsodent sold out. What's more is that people continued to brush, so much so that other companies began researching Pepsodent's secret and began copying it. More than a century later, we're still brushing as part of our daily routine. Now, some didn't realize it at the time, but Hopkins' advertising contained a formula that scientists would later discover would lead to habits. The three components of the formula were cue, routine, and reward. And now you can read more about these components in the book, The Power of Habit. I simply share the story of Claude Hopkins and his scientific method of advertising as a prelude to our guest today. Dr. Joe Sanfelippo is a superintendent in Fall Creek, Wisconsin. It is hard to be on social media and not recognize Joe or the name Fall Creek, Wisconsin, or his district mascot, the Crickets. Joe is also a co-author of the book The Power of Branding, Telling Your School's Story. He's a champion for public education. He believes everyone should have a hand in educating students today, and this includes the students themselves. It is hard not to be fired up after listening to Joe speak passionately about education. Trust me. Joe, welcome to Anchored in Education.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Hey, now before we get started, we'd like to find out a little bit more about you and how you became anchored in education.
So I started right out of college. I taught second grade, and then I taught fifth grade, and then I got a master's degree at psych, so I was a counselor for 4 years, and then I got another master's in educational leadership and jumped into a principalship, which was a fantastic experience. And then after I did that for about 7 or 8 years, now I'm thinking about, then I finished my doctorate and got into the superintendency. So that's really about it. Like I just trying to figure out ways to try to help people grow in their own role, and from a teacher to a counselor to a principal to a superintendent, always trying to keep people's thoughts in mind in terms of where they're going and how I can help them at some point get them to what they're looking for.
So at what point did you realize that education was the place you wanted to be?
Oh, that's easy. That was really early. That was before I got to school. That was in high school. I had a high school basketball coach that I would help him work basketball camps in the summer, and he used to tell me, "But you have just a really, fantastic knack for connecting with kids." And so he would make me do a lot of stuff that he didn't want to with the kids. So I would do a lot of the youth stuff because it just, he was fine with it, and he gave me some great experience. And he's still a tremendous mentor to me today. He actually just retired this year. His name is Tom Nice. He's a coach and a teacher, and he's now living in southern Wisconsin. So very great, fantastic guy, and I owe a tremendous amount to him.
All right, so now I was looking at the list of what we could talk about today, and it's really It's so many things that you are either doing now or you have done to improve schools, because you're truly an advocate not only for your own school but for public education in general.
Yeah,
But let's go ahead and start with hashtag Go Crickets.
my
This,
people though. Those are
yeah,
my people.
that's right. I'm sure it's the first of many shout outs we'll be giving, but hashtag Go Crickets it's your hashtag, it's your brand for
Right.
your district in Fall Creek, Wisconsin. And now we used to think of branding for businesses. In fact, I opened up today's episode talking about how businesses would use advertising to brand. But can you talk with us on the importance of branding in a school district?
Yeah, I think the thing that we need to understand about, well, I think branding got a really or like a relatively negative connotation to it because it involves sales in some regard, and I think really it doesn't involve sales as much as it involves influence. And what we wanted to do with with our brand or with the Go Crickets brand is just Jeff Bezos says that your brand is what people say about you when you're not there. So how are we making sure that we're doing everything we can to be in every conversation when we're not around? Like we want people to be talking about the incredible work that our people are doing. We want people to be talking about the incredible work that our kids are doing and the connections that we're making across the country, and making sure that people know and understand that we're kind of in this thing together, and what does that really look like moving forward. So the brand is it's easy in that for us, in that we you found we had something that's very unique in a mascot. But we also found that the power came in the stories, because it doesn't matter if you have a unique mascot if your stories aren't, relevant or moving people. So the thing that we tell people when it comes to the branding process is we always want to make sure the messages are simple, unique, and repeatable. And if
Okay.
they're simple, unique, and repeatable, then everybody's got an opportunity to tell the same story. If they're not simple, unique, and repeatable, then people are going to be telling different stories at different times, and you never get the momentum that you're looking for when it comes to moving things forward. So we keep that in mind all the time, and tell our group that, and tell other groups that. Just like make sure that when you're out there, you're talking about, think about who we're talking to, and making sure that they can go and have the conversation with somebody else.
Okay, now I'm not sure how many times I've heard a presenter say, or, I've even said it myself, that it takes a village to raise a child. And so, kind of
Yeah.
going with what you're saying, I feel like you've gone beyond saying this in Fall Creek, and you're kind of living and breathing this mantra, because, case in point, people in the community, and this is what you're talking about, that not just in the school, they can come up to you and they can recite the district's mission. And
Absolutely.
it's because, and what is it?
We're a community that works, learns, and succeeds together.
Yeah. So so you've given away things using social media and getting people involved. So how important is this to the advancement in education?
Yeah, I think the thing that we need to keep in mind though is that the mission and vision changes from time to time, and a lot of times it's words written on a piece of paper. But what are we really living? I mean, people can recite the mission of the district to me, but it still doesn't really mean anything to them because they don't really know how it's being lived day in and day out. At the same time, I walk into a place and people start yelling "Go Crickets." Now it's a different conversation because people know that, they connect with that, they want that, they want the gear that says "Go Crickets," not a community that works, learns, and succeeds together. So we want to make sure that we want people to wear their stuff with pride. We want them to walk into places that we are, that we're like outside of Fall Creek, and wear that Go Cricket stuff with pride, and have people ask them about it. And we have staff members that'll go all over the country with their family on vacation, and they'll be wearing their Fall Creek stuff, and they'll get stopped more often than not. People will they'll recognize Go Crickets, and they'll ask them questions. There's a lot of educators in the world,
Oh
right?
yeah.
And so we want to make sure that when people see our stuff, they have that sense of pride and ownership. And we got a lot of stuff out there across the country. We got a piece of Fall Creek gear in every state in America for sure. We got like 20 other countries, on our Where in the World is Fall Creek Pride board. So I mean, all that stuff does it mean anything? I don't know if it means anything, but it does. It is a conversation starter and gets people to the page that we want them to be on when we can talk about the incredible work that our kids are doing. Like our teachers and our kids are crushing it. They are doing incredible things. They deserve to have their story told. And if that means that every time I get a chance to walk out of our doors and say "Go Crickets," and then they get a chance to go somewhere and people know who they are, then we're going to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, You hit on this, and so we've talked about branding for a district. We think of connecting with the community, but you would probably argue that branding truly begins with connecting with those inside the community. And I'm
Oh,
sorry,
absolutely.
inside the
In the
school
school.
community.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I think the thing that we have to be really cognizant of when we're talking about that is, and we mentioned it in the Power of Branding that I co-authored with my friend Tony Sinanis, was that your brand promise has to match your brand experience. If the brand that you're putting out there is not the match when people walk into the building, then the people inside of the building are going to be the first ones to say, "Hey, that's not really how it is here," and rightfully so. Like, they don't want to live a lie as well. So we start with our. But here's the thing: we don't just start with our staff. We start with their network. When you hire a person into your district, you don't hire the person; you hire their network. Everybody comes with a network. Everybody is somebody's kid. It doesn't matter if they're 4, 14, 24, 44. Everybody is somebody's kid. So how are you making sure that you're connected to the network of these people by making the offer to these people that you bring into your schools? You're making that memorable, and then taking that offer and making sure that you send it to the parents of the candidate or the spouse of the candidate, and letting them tell the story about the work that you're doing, making sure that they have gear that they can come to the football game with, that their husbands have gear, that their kids have gear. Like, you're making tens of thousands of dollars of an investment into these people. Throw a $7 shirt and hat at them so they can come to the football game and feel like they belong.
Man, I tell you what, you're getting me fired up right now, and I hope I hope our listeners are too. Now,
I hope so.
So let's expand on this a little bit, because an important message that you're bringing to us that I think everybody should hear now, if they haven't already, is how every person, and I think we're talking every person in a district, is valuable. And so, as you say, we need to quit the narrative that says I'm just a secretary or I'm
Right.
just a janitor. So explain that thinking shift and how it impacts the mission of the school.
But the thing that I think happened with us as educators, no matter what role we play, is we stopped being proud of the work and we started defending the work. And there's a distinct difference between being proud of the work and defending the work, because when you're proud of the work, you can't wait to talk about the work, because there's going to be something positive coming back at you, so you can be positive again and again and again. When you're defending the work, now you're in this position where you're going to say something to somebody and they're going to say something negative, so you have to defend it again, defend it again, defend it again. And if you're always defending the work to the same person or group of people, at some point you avoid conversations with that person or group of people, because it's just a lot of work to always defend what's happening in your space. So guess what? When you do that, when you walk away from that conversation, when you stop talking about the great things, you not only devalue your work, but you give the person that you're talking to or not talking to license to do exactly the same. Because why would they change the way that they talk about us if we're not going to change the way that we talk about us? When you use the word just and only, it devalues everything you do and gives license to the person that you're talking to go out and talk about you however they want to, because we're not changing the way that we talk about it. And here's the thing that kind of cranks me up about it, and that is, I think that there are a lot of educators in the world, and me included sometimes, where I'll say, when I used to say, like, I'm just to this or I'm just to that, we're hoping that the person that we're talking to kind of comes back at us and says, no, you're fantastic.
Yeah.
You're wonderful. You changed lives. You're the best thing that's ever happened to people, right? When they don't say that, then we start to believe that we're just because it wasn't refuted. And that's the problem.
That fishing expedition for reassurance turns into validation of something that's not really true, but it's still there.
I 100% agree. Absolutely.
Okay, so let's move to the impact of 30 seconds. And this is quite possibly one of my favorite leadership challenges that you have posted. And you also have videos posted on your website showing participants trying this challenge. Can you give our listeners an idea of the 30-second challenge and how we can begin to utilize this to our advantage?
Yeah, so we tell our staff that we build or kill culture in 30-second increments. Every 30 seconds is an opportunity to build culture or kill culture. And what are we doing with every interaction? Because every interaction matters, because we just never know which one they're going to talk about in 10 years. They will talk about you. The question becomes, what are they going to say based on what happens every interaction that they have? And if we walk into interactions knowing that might be the one that they talk about in 10 years, then we treat it differently because our outlook is different when we walk into it. So the thing that we tell people, or I started doing, I did this like in 2016. So in 2016, I was doing a welcome back to school thing, and I get my whole staff into the auditorium, and I said, all right, everybody stand up, and we build culture in 30 seconds. Every 30 seconds is an opportunity to build or kill culture. It's important that you understand that it only takes 30 seconds. And they're like, yeah, no, you can't do it in 30 seconds. It's way too short. There's no chance. I'm like, no, it is. I can prove it to you. So I said, I want you to stand up. I want you to stand face to face. When I say go, I want you to get 2 inches from each other's nose and stare into each other's eyes. And then I just rolled off 15 seconds of them doing that, and none of them did it. They all backed out after like 10 seconds. And I said, don't tell me you can't change culture in 30 seconds when after 15 you're looking for an exit strategy. This is not it's not about the time. It's what you do with the time. What are you doing to make sure that you connect with people with every interaction? Because they're going to talk about you at some point.
Absolutely. And so that's not just within the school, but that is out in the community, that you need to be able to take advantage of every conversation that you have, even if it's going to be something as simple as just, a hello to the door greeter or the cashier.
Right.
That's an opportunity to steer the conversation towards your school.
Right.
Okay.
I totally agree. And you do it like as much as you can, like any opportunity that we have to create these moments that people are going to talk to. I was just in Iowa City. And I'm at Heinz ice cream place, which is a fantastic ice cream place, by the way. And we were sitting there, a friend of mine, we're sitting there, we're getting ready to pay. There was this older gentleman there, and he had some ice cream. And I'm like, I want to cover that for you. Can I buy that ice cream for you? And he looked at me, he's like, no, you can't do that. I'm like, I would love to buy that ice cream for you. I would love it. It would be my honor to buy you an ice cream right now, right? And it cost me $2. $2. But that guy's going to talk to 3 other people about how some guy in a Go Cricket shirt bought him some ice cream. And that's it. And now they're going to talk about that. That's fine. That's what we want. It's not about buying the ice cream. It's about creating the moment that they're going to talk about when they leave. And sometimes, yeah, that's buying stuff. Sometimes it's having a conversation with them. Sometimes it's noticing something that nobody else is going to notice. But it's all done in 30 seconds.
Now, how important, using that example you just gave in Iowa City, that's quite a distance from Fall Creek, Wisconsin. How important is it that people outside of our community, because I think that's what we forget about, that we are important beyond just what our district boundaries are.
Oh, yeah, because it changes the conversation outside. One of the pieces that we talk a lot about is the idea that 80% of the voting public don't have kids in school. So if 80% of the voting public don't have kids in school, that means 80% of the voting public are making determinations about you based on what happened to them when they were in school or to their kids when their kids were in school. And until you do something to change that mindset, you're still going to tell a story about how they didn't get the second chicken sandwich at lunch or got put into the wall at recess, but they got a grade they didn't deserve. They're going to talk about it all the time until we start thinking about things differently.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. All right.
And not even thinking about things differently. It's, we talk about people will tell me, well, Joe, it's the thought that counts. No, it's not. It's not the thought that counts. It's the action on the thought that counts. Don't think about people that have helped you get to this place in your life and never tell them. Tell them. Like every opportunity is a chance to tell them that they're great, that they want to make sure that you know that you care about them. That's what it's all about.
While we're on the topic of 30 seconds, we're going to shift a little bit, and now we're going to talk about how students can witness a lot happen in this time. And something they witness frequently throughout the day are interactions with others, and our interactions with others. So it may be with other students or with other adults, and you rightly point out that kids may not remember what they did at school, but they'll remember what they saw. Can we talk for a few minutes on how important every interaction is?
Oh, sure. Well, I'll tell you, the one thing that you can understand about we need to understand about this is you can get the pretty good indication of the culture of a building, a school building, or any building, I guess, by the way that the adults are interacting with each other. You can walk down one hallway, and however the adults are interacting with each other, that's what you're going to get for the most part, because when it comes down to it, we see what, we model, or we get what we model. And so the more that we're out there modeling the great work, the better opportunity we have for kids to model the great work. Having said that, the converse is true as well. If we're modeling not interacting with each other, if we're modeling not acknowledging people in the hallway, if we're modeling, when people walk into the building and say, oh, no, you need to go to the office, instead of saying, hey, I'm happy that you're here. Can I get you to where you're going? What do you need? Where do you need help getting to? I can help you wherever you need, getting to wherever you need. That's totally different. So all of those interactions interactions are truly, important in terms of those conversations, because I think they totally they get to the point where kids are going to want to talk about it. Kids go home from school and they don't tell parents what they did at school, because the follow-up question is usually an obligation to do something. If you say, what'd you do at school? And the kid says, well, in math, we did this and this. And then the parent says, well, yeah, do you have any homework? Is there some follow-up they have to do on that? So they don't talk about that. But when they do say, here's what I saw at school. Here's what I saw in the hallway with these two adults. Here's what this kid did in the class or whatever. They'll say that all day, because it doesn't come with a follow-up obligation to do something. So they'll talk about what they saw as opposed to what they did, because they don't want to have to do any more.
Yeah. And you mentioned earlier that about, throw a $7 t-shirt. Interactions are free. What you're talking about here, simply, it costs nothing. It costs nothing to change the conversation, to change the tone, to change the message. This is all something that we can impact profoundly without spending a dollar. So,
without question.
Now that we've mentioned students, I think that you may have something to say about this. Let's talk about the role that you see them playing in a school. And I'm guessing that it'll come as no surprise that you're going to tell us it goes way beyond just learning.
Yeah, it's like none of us have jobs if they're not there. Like, let's be clear about that. Like, I mean, these parents send their most prized possession to us every day, and they expect that when they send them there, they feel safe and they feel loved and cared for, and that they learn. But at the same time, if we don't have, if we're not in a place where we're like the student feels their own value, they can't get to the point where they're valuing everything else that goes on around them. The thing that we talk to groups about a lot is nobody can come to collective efficacy if they first don't have self-efficacy. So if they don't believe in themselves first, there's no way they'll believe in everybody all together, right? Like you got to be in a spot where they feel like they have value, and the value is I get so cranked because when we start thinking about it, people are like, well, we're a blue ribbon school and and our kids score really high. That's great, congratulations to you. But the kids don't as much as they get into the fact that they have people that care about them and that want them to do well, and then allow them to learn, and making sure that they have some ownership of what happens there. Because when they own their learning, then they have a better opportunity to succeed moving forward.
Wow. I mean, everything you mention is just it like turns almost what we think of education upside down, and it shouldn't. Let me be clear about that. We should all be with your line of thinking here, in that it starts very simple. Without them, we don't have a job. But in the end, it goes beyond what is recognized at state and federal levels, and what I think would say the narrative used to be in our communities, which is we just look at test scores. We go way beyond that, and we need to. We're not saying that's not important. And you're not saying the blue ribbon school is not important, but that's not the be all end all. Am I getting that right?
It should not be the defining moment at all. At the same time, it's important. It's important because we're learning organizations. And we lead. I lead a learning organization, so I should lead learning in that organization. Let's be clear about that. We should always be learning. And the thing that we tell our groups. Our group in Fall Creek is that if the only people who are learning are ages 4 to 18, then we're doing it wrong. So how are we making sure that the adults are learning too? Because we're at the core of what we are. We're a learning organization, but nobody learns if they don't feel comfortable and safe to step out of their zone and extend themselves, right?
Right.
So first, obviously for us, relationships first, everything else second. But at the same time, everything else second does matter. It absolutely matters. It matters that kids learn. It matters that they progress. That totally matters. But when we place our value on a number, then we rarely have an opportunity to see the kid behind that number. And the most important thing is the kid behind that number, and make them feel great. I don't talk to my friends from high school about the incredible math lessons. I talk to them about all the conversations. The teachers that I knew liked me, to Tom Nyson, of the world that believed in me. Like, that's who I talked about. I didn't learn a ton in his class, and I tell him that. But I knew that I had somebody to talk to when my family needed it. Like, that's what I talk about.
And you're still talking about it.
And I'm still talking about it. And I've been out of high school for longer than I care to admit.
Hey, Joe, before we go, we've talked about a lot today, but and I warned listeners at the beginning before you came on that they were going to get fired up. So what is one thing educators, regardless of position, can do today in their classroom or their school or their district to start moving forward towards what you're talking about?
Change the way you talk about the work that you do. Definitely. Without question, change the way that you talk about the work that you do. Be proud of the work. You change lives. You make kids feel safe. You make them feel like they want to be there. Like, change that. And beyond changing the way that you talk about what you do, make sure that you acknowledge what's happening around you with the incredible things that your colleagues are doing. The one thing that we want to make sure that we do in every school, are making sure that we recognize the great work that's happening, which means we're walking through hallways with our eyes up, looking for the great stuff that's happening. Acknowledge that great stuff to the person who's doing it, so they know that we're acknowledging the great stuff that they're doing, and then extend the conversation to somebody who wasn't there, so they know that there's incredible things happening across the hall or down the hallway, or wherever the case may be. So if you recognize, acknowledge, and extend, you change the way that people talk about the work that you do.
No matter how you look at that, what you're talking about is not complicated. This is something very simple. Anybody can do. You have to be, I guess you have to be willing. You have to be willing
Right.
to put in effort. You have to be willing to put in work. But the reward of doing this is beyond measure.
The reward is making sure that you live and work in a place that you want to go to every day. And then if you're happier, the people in your space are going to be happier. That's kind of the way that it works.
Yeah,
Not rocket science, man. It's not. It's not rocket science. It's treat each other, fairly, treat each other well, treat each other like you want them to be there. Acknowledge that they do great work, and they'll do great work.
Well, and I'm hoping that our listeners today can be inspired to go out and do great work. Joe, thank you so much for joining us on Anchornet Education today.
Hey, man, I appreciate your time. I hope you have a wonderful day, and go Crickets.
Are you fired up yet? Now, you can follow Joe on Twitter today. Search at Joe_Sanfelippo to find him, or simply search #GoCrickets. You can also head over to escottengland.com and click on today's episode to read more about Joe and to find resources, including books he has co-authored. Now, I can't say for certain that Joe consciously prescribed the 3 components that Claude Hopkins set forth in his advertising campaigns, but look at it this way for just a second. The first component is Q. Joe began celebrating the Fall Creek tradition with #GoCrickets on social media. He did not stop there, though. You can find #GoCrickets on all kinds of swag items such as shirts, lanyards, and items such as that. Now, the next component is routine. He constantly promotes his school's mantra, mission, motto, creed, whatever he can to promote Fall Creek School District. Not only that, he got others to buy into the idea of promoting the district. People in the community, even those without children in the district, know exactly what the purpose of Joe's district is. The routine becomes a habit. The final component is reward. In this case, the reward is celebrated by all constituents in Fall Creek, Wisconsin. Teachers, students, community members, they all proudly promote the district's message and goals on education. More than that, people across the United States begin to recognize the name Fall Creek and Go Crickets. Not bad for a town stretching to reach 1,500 people. But Joe will be the first to tell you that it goes beyond just being recognized. It is changing the narrative in education. It is not letting others tell a story that is incorrect or inaccurate. We owe it to our community to let them know what our mission is. Most importantly, we owe it to our community to celebrate with us. Because as Joe will say, we're all in this together. And I'll add that at the end of the day, we are all anchored in education.